Hi guys, I've got something different for you today, in the form of a Simpsons tier list. Now I said I wanted to get content out there more frequently, and I think tier lists are a good way of doing that. I've just finished season 33 of The Simpsons, so as someone who has reviewed every single episode, I feel I'm in a good position to, fairly judge these characters. Obviously it's still going to be subjective, but I will try to put my biases aside and be as objective as possible. In terms of the tiers I've created, I've kept it fairly simple. I've gone with the God tier, which is just for characters that go above and beyond in terms of how iconic they are. I've got a great tier, a good tier, an average tier, a bad tier, and a get off my screen tier, which is exactly what it says on the tin. Characters that go in there, I want to get off my screen as soon as possible. Now, The Simpsons has a fairly good cast of characters in general, so I am expecting it to be fairly biased in favour of the good tiers here, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Obviously, there are so many characters here, so I don't want to go overboard with how long I spend on each of them, but I'll just give you my off-the-cuff opinion on where I think they rank. And of course, feel free to share your views on all of these characters in the comments. So to start off, we have Homer Simpson. And I don't really need to spend long here, do I? The guy's a god tier character. Not only for The Simpsons, but also for TV in general. You'll struggle to find a more iconic and funny character than this guy. And he's also a very relatable character, a very kind character to his family and all that. Just great all round. Homer is a god tier unquestionably. Moving on, we have Bart. Bart is again God in my opinion. Not like he's some god-like entity, but a god tier character for sure. For the first season or two, he was the breakout star of the show, so he was integral to its success. Over the years, he has lost a bit of his magic and funniness, I think, but he's still a great character, one of the funniest on the show, and also very iconic. Next we have Lisa. Lisa. I feel like I'll get hate if I don't put her in God, but I kind of want to put her in Great, to be honest. I mean, I'm torn between these two, because she is a great character, no doubt. She's had a lot of great episodes centered around her, but for the most part, I don't think she's the funniest character in the world, and in the newer seasons especially, she can be rather annoying. I don't know how much to factor that in, because this is not solely a classic era ranking. I do have to take into account the newer seasons as well, so I'm thinking that maybe slips Lisa down a peg. I know that's going to piss off all the Super Lisa fans, but screw it, I'm going to do it. Lisa is a great character. At her best, she's a god character, but she has too many mishaps in my opinion, so great it is. Marge, another one that's kind of towing the line between these two. I actually find Marge slightly funnier than Lisa, I think, but Marge maybe doesn't have quite as many iconic episodes around her as Lisa, so it's kind of hard to judge. I don't think Marge is a god tier character. She's close, but I don't think she quite gets there for me. So for that reason, she goes in Great. Above or below Lisa? I think I prefer Marge slightly to Lisa actually, so I'm gonna do that. Okay, so we're out of the main family now, outside of Maggie of course. And we have Apu. Apu is great, there's no doubt about that. Obviously it's sad what happened to him in recent times. He's basically being kicked off the show. I'm not going to get into that, you know my opinions on that. I think it's PC nonsense, but there you go. He's another iconic character. He's shown to be a workaholic in the classic era, which brings up great moments like him pretending to be a hummingbird, for example, when he works days on end. He's shown to be a flawed human being, who cheats on his wife and happily sells his customers tainted meat and stuff. But at the same time, he's not a horrible guy. He does have his moments where he helps out the community and whatnot. So yeah, I can't justify putting him in God, but he is a great character. I don't think he's above Lisa though, so I'll leave him there. Mr. Burns, this is a tough one. He's definitely in Great, he could even be God, to be honest. In the newer seasons, I don't think he's quite as good, but you could say that about every character, I guess. He's close to being a god tier character. You know what, I'm going to put him there, screw it. My favourite episode of all time is The Last Exit to Springfield, and Mr. Burns is a big reason why. So for that reason alone, I want to put him in God. He's also one of the most iconic characters for the series. Very funny, just a great villain and antagonist for the series. Has a deep and interesting history with the Simpsons family. His evil actions usually get comeuppance as well, so yeah, there's not a lot to hate about Mr. Burns as a character. He goes in God for me. Next up we have apparently stupid sexy Flanders. He's another one who I have a soft spot for. I'm tempted to put him in God. Maybe Great though, I don't know. I don't think he's quite as good as Mr. Burns. I think he's better than Apu. It's a tough one. I think I'm gonna put him in Great. He has some iconic moments, he is very funny. Maybe he's got a bit too repetitive over time. I mean, Flanderization is a term that was invented for him after all. But even in his worst moments, I don't think he's that bad. Yeah, I think Great is perfect for him. Mo. Mo. Why don't you like me? Nobody likes me. Well, I like you, Mo. I'm gonna put you in God, to be honest, mate. Mo and Mr. Burns were always going to be the two non-Simpson family members who were going to get God for me. He's involved in the show so much, given how much Homer hangs out at Mo's bar. He has great funny moments, but he also has kind of a dark story, which is somewhat unique for the show, and he also has some great emotional moments, not just in the classic era, but even past that, like Mo's Baby Blues for example. Yeah, I'm definitely happy with Mo as a God tier character. Better or worse than Mr. Burns? That's a tough one. I'm gonna leave him below Mr. Burns for now, but maybe I'll have a look again later. Krusty the Clown. You see, this is where I might get a bit controversial. Anyone who's watched my season reviews know I'm not the biggest Krusty fan. His plot lines tend to be quite repetitive, and he's always been a jerk, and I don't really find him that funny doing it, to be honest. He has great moments, of course he does. My favourite being, what the hell was that? After he sees the Worker and Parasite cartoon in Krusty Gets Cancelled. But in general, I'm not the biggest fan of him. I don't know if I can call him average, because I do think he's better than that. I just can't call him one of the best, though. I don't think he's on par with these characters, frankly. For me, at least. I know most people would probably disagree, but he's a good character for me, nothing more. Yeah, that's kind of where I leave him. Sorry about that, guys. Next up, we have Abe. He's a great character. Incredibly funny. Some of the funniest moments in this series come from him, like his rambling in Last Exit to Springfield. You of course have the old man yells at cloud meme. Another line from him which comes to mind is, I did the Iggy, when he finds out that he can get paid for pretending to do Itchy and Scratchy. Yeah, he was a great character, some great flashback episodes involving him, Homer and Mona. I do think they've maybe overdone that in the HD seasons, but I can't really hold that against him. Yeah, he's a great character. Next up is Kirk Van Houten. I do like him. He's a bit pathetic, but that's his charm, isn't it, I guess? That picture of him there with his race car bed is an iconic moment. I also love his palaver about spaghetti meals in one of the Treehouse of Horrors. Can I justify putting him as great though is the point? I don't think he's as good as these characters. He's probably on a level of Krusty if I'm honest. In fact, I personally prefer him over Krusty, so I'm gonna put him there. I can't put him in great, but he's definitely a good character. Edna Krabappel. I do like Edna. I don't think she's the funniest character in the world, which makes me struggle to put her in great. But she is one of the more interesting characters on the show, in my opinion. She was played great by Marsha Wallace before she sadly passed away. Some great episodes involving her, like Bart the Lover. Her relationship with Bart is one of the best, most underrated in the series, if you ask me. It's a tough one. I'm gonna leave her in great for now. It may change later on, but we'll see. Next up we have Barney. Barney is good, I think, probably around here. He's one of the few characters that actually had a continuity change when he quits drinking. Of course, he ends up going back to booze later on. In general, he has funny moments. Who could forget his rant about prime ministers in Homer at the Bat, as well as his astronaut training in Deep Space Homer. He is of course a one-note character though, so he can, I guess, get repetitive. And he does lose some of his luster during the teen season, so yeah, I think middle of good is about right for him. Next up we have Comic Book Guy. I like him, and I think he's quite iconic, isn't he, as well, to be honest? With all of his catchphrases like, worst episode ever. I find his voice quite fun to impersonate, I really do. I also enjoy his witty put-downs to people, and his sarcastic tint. I'm always a sucker for sarcastic characters, so I'm a bit biased towards him. And even in the later seasons, he has a change, doesn't he, with getting a wife named Kumiko. That was vaguely interesting even, so does he get into great? I think he does, to be honest. Most people probably won't like him as much as I do, but I find him funny the vast majority of the time. Next up we have Principal Skinner. He's another great character. I think he's better than Comic Book Guy. I think he's better than Mrs. K. Is he better than Abe and Apu? I think he might be actually. I don't think he's better than Flanders, but he is an iconic character again. In the early seasons I enjoyed his Vietnam flashbacks when he had kind of more depth to his character. Obviously the whole Principal and the Pauper thing was a big notch against him, but I can personally just write that episode off quite easily. In the HD seasons he does become a bit too much of a pushover, to use a politically correct term, both to the women he has in his life, mostly his mum of course, but also with Superintendent Chalmers. He's still funny though a lot of the time, with just how out of touch he can be. But then again, it was the children who were wrong after all, so who am I to criticise on that front? And of course, the steamed ham section is one of the best bits in series history, so he gets a bit of a bump for that. Next up we have Dr. Hibbert's wife, who I don't actually remember the name of. Excuse me for that. I can't really say get off my screen because she doesn't really do anything bad, but she hardly does anything on the show, does she? So, moving on. Who the hell are these two? Are they the radio guys? I can't remember their names either, if they even have names, but I'm gonna call them Bad because I have to put some in Bad, don't I? Next up we have Nelson. Nelson is another one who I'm not quite as big on as some people are. He has great episodes around him when it does go deep into why he acts the way he does, and why he is a bully, but even that gets a bit murky sometimes, with all the continuity issues about his dad, that never feels quite as solid and convincing as it should. I also don't find myself laughing at him that much, to be honest. Obviously he has his iconic ha ha catchphrase, but he's definitely not as funny to me as a lot of the characters up there at the top. Does he get into great? I don't think he does for me, you know. He probably would for most people, but he doesn't for me. I think he's better than Barney though, I think he's better than Krusty, and he's better than Kirk. He goes at the top of good for me. Bleeding Gums Murphy. I think he's average, to be honest. Obviously we don't see much of him. He dies in like season 5 or 6, was it? It might have been 7 actually. Remind me in the comments. But either way, he doesn't get much screen time. He helps Lisa out, I guess, but he's not particularly funny, is he? So he's just average. Next up we have Chief Wiggum. He's a great character. I put him above these two actually. I'm not sure I put him above Abe. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave him there. He's a stereotypical like incompetent cop, corrupt cop as well, but he's incredibly funny, isn't he? And he does have the odd good moment where he actually tries to buck his ideas up. Yeah, he just has to be great in my opinion. Milhouse. Ladard, that is, Milhouse. Milhouse is a bit of a tough one for me. He can get annoying at times, but he also has the odd unexpected great moment, like when he says, "Up yours, Crabapple," in Summer of 4'2", as well as when he kind of tortures Bart over his soul, in Bart Sells His Soul. To be honest, I do think he is a more important character than the likes of Nelson and his dad. I think he's better than his dad. So, he's either top of good or bottom of great. I think he sneaks into great, to be honest. He gets a lot of screen time, and his friendship with Bart is quite underrated, I think. They do have some great moments together when they show they genuinely care for each other, so yeah. He just about sneaks into great. Ah, Sideshow Bob! I wish I could put him in God, but I don't think I can quite justify doing that, because he doesn't appear quite enough, and he has tailed off a bit as the series went on. He's still great though, isn't he? He's still absolutely a great character. Better than a lot of these, so where does he stop? He stops there. That's where he stops. But some of the best episodes of all time are from Sideshow Bob. Cape Fear, Sideshow Bob Roberts. Even the season 1 episode, Krusty Gets Busted, was quite good. The best episode of that season in my opinion, so he's absolutely iconic. Kelsey Grammer does a great job playing him. He's great. He just doesn't appear quite enough to be higher. Next up we have Brandine, who I'm not a fan of, I must admit. I mean, in fairness, she's above Lee's clowns, but not much higher. I can't put her in average because I think she's below par most of the time she's on screen. She's a stereotypical kind of country bumpkin, just like Cletus, but she's not as funny as Cletus, and doesn't get as much screen time either, so yeah, I can't justify putting her any higher. She gets on my nerves a bit, to be honest. Next up we have Patty and Selma. I'll rank them together. Patty I think is on the low end of good. Selma I think is on the high end of good. Selma obviously is the more important character on the show, both in terms of screen time and relevance. But Patty's alright too. I mean, they're both the same a lot of the time, aren't they? But Patty obviously gets revealed that she's a lesbian and has some good plots relating to that. Selma, she obviously adopts the kid and has a relationship with Troy McClure, which is iconic. And Sideshow Bob, I guess, as well, in Black Widower. That's another episode I forgot to mention, by the way, about Sideshow Bob. Black Widower is one of the best episodes of all time, in my opinion. Very underrated. So Selma gets in the near the top of good, I think. Patty is slightly worse. They do have their bad moments, especially that episode where they both kidnap Homer. That was them both being far too evil, in my opinion, but they're not usually that bad. And their moments working at the DMV can be quite funny, so good is right for them. Next up is Bumblebee Man. And I think he gets a average or bad. I'm not a fan of him. I think he gets a bad, all things considered. He never really did much for me. Out of all the entertainment type figures, he was the weakest. Very stereotypical, doesn't bring much to the table. Yeah, he's just mediocre, at best. Next we have Carl. I don't think he's quite as good as Lenny, who we'll get to, but he's still good. I think he's better than Patty. I don't think he's quite as good as Barney, so he goes there. The HD seasons actually did a decent job expanding on his character, and his voice change was the best one I think, out of all the voice changes they had. So yeah, he's just a decent guy, isn't he, for the most part? He has the odd good moment as well, he's just a good character. Lenny I think is better than Carl though, because he's more funny. I think Lenny's probably more funny than Barney actually, and I personally prefer him over Krusty and Kirk. he's going here. The running gag of his eye getting injured, as you can see in that picture there, is quite good. The whole "not Lenny" from the Simpson family is a classic moment. And his whole relationship with Carl is quite interesting as well, I guess. Yeah, he's just good, solid. What more can I say? Now we have the crazy cat lady. I mean, she's average. She's alright for a one-off gag, but there's nothing more to her, is there? So she's average. The three-eyed fish, Blinky. He's a bit of an odd character to have on this list, but again, it's alright for the purpose it serves. Superintendent Chalmers. I like him quite a lot, actually. Maybe he gets a bit overused in the HD seasons, but in the classic era, I think he was used the perfect amount. I'm going to put him right at the top of good. The steamed ham section alone puts him right up there. Absolutely classic TV. And his relationship with Skinner does produce some genuinely good character moments, so yeah, he's good. Very good. Next up is Cletus. And while I prefer him to his wife, I still don't think he's particularly good. You know what, I'm going to put him at the top of average. I don't think he's that great. Sure, he has the odd good moment, like Cletus the Stack George Yokel song and all that. But he also has loads of bad episodes, where he kind of mistreats his kids and stuff. Of course, he's very stereotypical. I don't know, maybe it's the HD seasons souring my taste on him, but he's just average in my opinion. Next up we have Artie Ziff, who doesn't appear that much, but when he does, it's usually quite good, so for that reason I'm going to put him in good. There's not a lot to his character really, but his backstory with Marge is quite interesting, and the whole "I'm watching you for a camera" thing is one of the best moments from post-classic Simpsons in my opinion, so if you take him for what he is, he's good. Next up we have, is this Judge Harm, I think is her name? Or something like that. I think we have a get off my screen character on our hands here. I really don't like her. She was brought in to be this strict judge, but she never really has that much impact, and she's certainly not funny, so yeah, just a bit of a failed character, if you ask me. Next we have Cookie Kwan, who's another average character, probably around here. In fairness, Bleeding Gums should be above her as well. But back to Cookie Kwan, yeah, she's a real estate kind of salesperson, whatever you want to call it. She does that job reasonably well, but she's nothing too special, is she? Let's be honest. Next up we have, is this Database? I think that's his name. He's a nerdy kid that doesn't get much to do. He's average at best, probably around here. Next up we have Disco Stew. I think he's good. He is a one-note character of course, but he has some good moments throughout the series. My favourite one being from Sweet and Sour Marge, when he kind of weirds Marge out by dancing, after apparently getting hooked on sugar. I think he's more iconic than most side characters as well, so I think he deserves his ranking there. Next up we have Dolph. Dolph is alright. He's probably the least developed out of the bullies, but he still can have his good moments. Again, I think he's kind of joined Stu on the lower end of good. Dr. Nick. Hi everybody. Hi Dr. Nick. That is the first thing that comes to mind when I think of him, but he does have quite a few funny moments on the show, doesn't he? I think he's great, to be honest. I really do. Sure, he doesn't appear that much, but that makes it all the better when he does appear. Inflammable means flammable, what a country, is one of my favourite jokes from the series. Yeah, he's just a legend, isn't he? He's Dr. Nick, for crying out loud. Next up is Dredwick Tatum. He's good, isn't he, for what he is? As a casual boxing fan, I can appreciate how well he works as a parody of Mike Tyson, and I do love the episode The Home Lay Fool, so I definitely consider him a good character. Next up is Duffman. I think he's good, just about. He can get a bit repetitive at times, but he usually brings some energy to the table whenever he's on screen, so that's something. Next up is Eddie. He's alright. He has the odd funny moment, being this typical dumb cop. My favourite line from him in the show is probably, Shakes, you don't know what you're getting, in 22 short films about Springfield. He complements Chief Wiggum reasonably well, so yeah, he's good. How many more characters do we have to go, by the way? Still loads. There's so many of them, isn't there? In fairness, at least a lot of these are going to be nothing characters who I can skip over fairly quickly. Next up is Fat Tony, who is an interesting character, I would say. He's definitely good. I think he's higher up on good as well. Not as good as Nelson, not quite as good as Selma, but better than Lenny. The whole Mafia tie-in I think is great. It's great to have the Simpsons have some satire on the Mafia. He does bring a villainous presence, but he can also be funny with it at the same time, so yeah, he's definitely a good character. I didn't like how he got killed off and replaced by basically the same character later in the series, but that's by the by. Kinky Frinky, he's alright. And when I say alright, I mean better than average. Probably around here. He does fill in a good niche as like the one scientist on the show, and he can be funny with it at times. I don't think he ever elevates to being truly great, but he is good for what he is. Next up is Boo Barella, I think, is her name. I mean, I kind of want to call her bad. Not because she's bad necessarily herself, but she serves no purpose really. She's just kind of there, isn't she? And I don't find her funny, so whenever she comes on in commercials and stuff, it's just mess, so I'm gonna be a bit mean and put her in bad. I'm sorry, Booberella, but your boobs do not blind me. Next up, we have Otto. He's another one around this kind of good level. I think he's better in the earlier seasons, to be honest. Where they kind of lean into his drug addiction a bit more. It allows him to do more crazy stuff that gets the kids into more crazy situations. He's a bit underused in the more recent seasons, but he still has his fun moments. Yeah, he's good. This is the baby that is Maggie's enemy, and he fulfills the purpose, I guess. He doesn't appear much, he's average, not much to say there. Gil Gunderson. I'm not a big Gil fan, to be honest. They tried to kind of make him fill in for Phil Hartman's characters after he passed away, but he doesn't really do the job of a lawyer very well. He's so pathetic that it gets annoying at times. He's not particularly charismatic. Maybe I'm talking myself into giving him an average here. You know what, I'm going to put him an average. Here. He has the odd good moment, but pretty much every character does. But I would be hard pressed to say the good outweighs the bad with him. I think it's about even on that front. Next up, we have God. I mean, what can I say? I don't want God to strike me down, so I kind of want to put God in God, but in all seriousness, he's alright, isn't he, when he appears? I love him in Homer the Heretic. So yeah, he's top of average. It's God, isn't he? So yeah, top of average. Hank Scorpio. It's kind of tough to rank one episode characters. Obviously, if I was going to rank him only on that one episode, he'd be God, because he's like one of the best one-off characters ever. Played masterfully by Albert Brooks. But I'm not sure I can put him in God overall because obviously he never had a chance to have the longevity. But I have to put him in great at least, just for the impact he had. He's above Dr. Nick, but I can't put him above Milhouse. I think objectively that's a reasonable place for him to go. Hans Moleman, this guy is a legend. I don't care what anyone says. I'm tempted to put him in great as well. He's kind of like Dr. Nick in my opinion. Doesn't appear that often. Isn't ever plot critical. But is very underrated in terms of how many classic moments he has. Yeah, he's going in great. Hans Moleman is the man. Next up we have the infamous Helen Lovejoy. I know a lot of people are probably waiting for this one. Although I would love to be contrarian and say I love Helen Lovejoy as a character, I can't because I'm not a fan of her for the most part, I have to say. She's a town gossip, always being passive aggressive and arrogant. A complete hypocrite too, with how she raises her kid. Always being mean and nasty to Marge. Incredibly unlikable. I mean, it's kind of tough to rank her as a bad character because she was designed to be that way, but it still makes it an unpleasant experience watching her. She's not particularly funny either, really. She doesn't have any classic moments. Well, actually, I take that back. She does have the "Won't someone please think of the children?" which is a classic moment for sure. Is that enough to save her from being bad? I mean, she's not a get off my screen character because she has good moments. I think she's better than these characters in bad, to be honest. I think she's, you know what, I'm going to put her in average because she fulfills the role which the show wanted her to do. Doesn't make her any less annoying, but it does justify it somewhat. Herb Powell. He appears in 2 episodes, is voiced by Danny DeVito. He's good when he appears. I like his shock at how bad Homer's car was, but he was kind of at fault for that, and he did blame Homer. They made up in the end in a sequel to that episode. He's good, probably around here. Herman is a character who pretty much disappeared as the show went on. I don't think he was ever that great, to be honest. He was interesting, how shady he is, but I never thought he was that funny. So yeah, he's interesting more than he is good. Probably around here. Dr. Hibbert. He's definitely good overall. He suffered massively from the recent voice change, but going back to the classic era, he was great as this kind of somewhat serious, somewhat incompetent doctor. He kind of towed the line between the two. I don't think he's quite as funny as Dr. Nick, but his laugh is just as iconic. And he still has some great moments, so he's definitely good. Miss Hoover. You know what, I'm gonna call Miss Hoover bad. She's not the worst character ever, or anything. But whenever she's on screen, I'm just kind of like, why is she on screen? She's never funny, and they never explore her character like they do Edna Krabappel, so she doesn't bring much to the table, really, other than being a poor teacher. And the thing is, Mrs. K fulfills that role a lot better than her, so she's kind of superfluous, to be honest. I'm not a fan of her at all. Next up is Itchy and Scratchy. I have to rank them together, and they're great, aren't they? Let's be real. I mean, they're cartoon characters, but they're iconic. So many great moments come from them. The Itchy and Scratchy and Poochie show is fantastic. The episode where Marge tries to get them cancelled is great. A great little parody of Tom and Jerry as well. Yeah, definitely great. This is Jacqueline Bouvier. Marge's mother. She can get right out of here. She's like a worse version of what I just described with Miss Hoover. Whenever she's on screen, I'm like, why is she on my screen? Get off my screen. She's always been mean, always bringing the mood down, never funny, brings nothing to the table. Yeah, just a get off my screen character. Next up is Agnes Skinner. The thing is, I can make a case for some parts of Agnes being down here, but she also has some funny moments when she's up here. So, it's a tough one to rank her, really. I'm gonna put her in average overall. She's incredibly annoying at times with how bad she treats Skinner, and she is just a total B-word at times. That being said though, some of her savage comments can be funny, so she does at least offer something to make her appearances more tolerable. I don't know this guy's name, but is he the Chinese chef or restaurant owner? Something like that? Or maybe he's Japanese, I don't know. I mean, he's bad, he doesn't achieve anything, does he, really? He's not as annoying as Marge's mum, but yeah, he's just nothing, is he? He's nothing. He's a nobody. In fact, he tries to have Homer killed, doesn't he, in Guess Who's Coming to Criticize Dinner. So for that reason, I want to put him in Get Off My Screen. Next is Jenny, and she's, if ever there was average, then she's just it. She's meh. Doesn't achieve a lot, doesn't do a lot, just average. Jasper. Jasper is sneakily good. He doesn't get much to do, but he has some iconic moments. Obviously the "You better believe that's a paddling" is an iconic scene, as was his "Moon pies, what a time to be alive." Another iconic moment. Yeah, he's good. Definitely underrated, I think. Jessica Lovejoy. She's good for what she is, but she doesn't appear much. I think she's just about better than average, but no more than that. Jimbo Jones. He is the more fleshed out of the bullies. His appearance in The Telltale Head is good when he peer pressures Bart. Obviously, he briefly dates Laura Powers and Shauna in the newer episodes. We'll come to Shauna, don't worry about that. But overall, he's good for all he is. He's better than Dolph, I think, just about, but I can't put him much higher. The bullies might end up going together, to be honest. This is Julio, isn't it? The gay guy that was briefly Smithers' boyfriend. I don't find anything to him, to be honest. He's just below average, so bad. He's just a stereotype, isn't he, really? So he's bad. Kang and Kodos are icons. Icons of the show. Definitely high up in good or maybe even great. Yeah, I think they're kind of level with Itchy and Scratchy, aren't they? So great they go. Treehouse of Horror episodes are made better because of them. Nothing more to be said, really. Kearney again goes in with the other two bullies. He does have an extra layer to him, apparently being a father, but they never go anywhere with that, so he's good, but I think he maybe has a bit of underused potential, you know. Kent Brockman I very much like. He is going towards the top of good. He's a great satire on the media, how sleazy he is, and how he doesn't care about morals. He's quite happy to just go with the flow on whatever story they want. He's like Chalmers in that he has one of the most iconic scenes of the entire show under his belt, with the whole space ant thing. Yeah, he's definitely a good character. Not far off a great character. Mr. Largo. He's average. He's Lisa's music teacher, but he doesn't really achieve much. He's quite bitter for most of his appearances, which doesn't lend itself to being funny, so yeah, he's just there. Laura Powers, another one-off character, made a big impact, but kind of like Jessica Lovejoy, another one of Bart's crushes. I think I prefer her to Jessica actually, so I'll put her above Jessica, but I can't really put her any higher than that. Next up is the blue-haired lawyer. Meh. Well, I guess I just subconsciously gave away my thoughts on him there by saying meh. Yeah, he's average. I mean, he fulfills a role, but I don't find him that funny. He's just there in court cases, isn't he? Nothing more to be said. He definitely does a job as a lawyer. I can't remember his name, but he's obviously one of the mobsters. He just has to go in average. Got nowhere else to put him. No further comments. This is Lewis. Very similar. He doesn't appear much, doesn't do a lot. Average. Lindsay Nagel. She gets more to do in the more recent episodes, but she's never that great in my opinion. She's average at best. Probably around here. It's funny as you can see that average section starting to fill up as we reach the newer seasons. Certainly says something about how the show went over the years. Arnie Pie in the Sky. He's good, isn't he? He has some funny lines. His arguments with Kent Brockman are great, so I'm going to put him quite high in good actually. Probably higher than these lot. Maybe not higher than Carl, but up here. The best line from him is definitely, "Well, your heart would be black, Kent. Black as the ace of spades." Next up is the legend that is Lionel Hutz. This guy is great, isn't he? Arguably the best recurring character. He's better than a lot of these. Is he better than Sideshow Bob? That's a close one. That is close, actually. I think he's slightly funnier than Bob, but Bob is more dramatic, and probably slightly more iconic. So it's a tough one. Phil Hartman obviously did a great job as him. He has some of the best scenes in the entire series. Him talking about suing the film that had the title The Never Ending Story lives in my head rent free, and it always makes me crack up. Him changing his tie in court, also iconic. He just has too many classic moments to name. It really is close between him and Bob, but I'm gonna leave him below Bob for now. Next up it's Louis. He's better than the other gangster, but not much better. Yeah, probably around here. Next up is Lou. Very similar. Lou is better than Eddie, but not much better. Probably around here. Righto. Next up we have Luann van Houten. Not a fan really. Not particularly funny. Not as good as her husband Kirk, so she goes an average. Next is Luigi. He's very one note, and I don't think it's a particularly funny note to begin with, so he's going in bad for me. I can't really remember ever laughing at him, so yeah. Next up is Lunch Lady Doris. Can I call her good? I don't think she's that funny, but she has her moments, I guess. Her okie dokie after groundskeeper Willie strips off is probably her best moment. And she does her job, doesn't she, as a lunch lady, so she's alright, she's average. Next is Laureen Lumpkin. She's good. I like how she's obsessed with Homer. That gives her a different edge to her character. She's a good country singer and all that. For something different in the show, I think she works well, so I'm gonna put her in good. Next up we've got Maggie. We finally get to Maggie. I should have done her earlier really, but never mind. Obviously it's hard to rank her because she's a baby. She doesn't get much to do, doesn't obviously speak, but she does have a personality, doesn't she? She does have a edge about her. And she does have iconic moments. Shooting Mr. Burns is about as iconic as you can get. I don't think it's right to call her great because she's not as funny as any of these for obvious reasons. As I say, a tough one to rank, but trying to be objective about it, top of good feels about right. Next up is Manjula. She's average, no more than that. Actually, thinking about it, she might be bad even, because I can't remember a single memorable moment from her. Her story with Apu is a bit annoying to be honest. Obviously she has like tuplets with him, but that's never really built upon. And she's definitely not a funny character, so yeah, sorry, bad it is. Next up is Martin. Martin's definitely good. Obviously a nerd, gets picked on a lot, but he has some funny moments. It's quite interesting to see how competitive he is with Lisa at times, how they're almost rivals when they should be friends. The dynamic between these two is quite interesting really. He's not really prominent enough in the series to be called great or anything, so good seems right. Next up we have Dr. Marvin Monroe, who only appeared in the early seasons mainly. There was a bit of a running joke about whether he was dead or not. He had a bit of an annoying voice, which was apparently hard for a voice actor to do. The shock therapy scene from There's No Disgrace Like Home is an important scene for the series and very iconic, so that puts him up a little bit, but realistically, he can't go into good, can he? Next up is Maud Flanders. Obviously she gets killed in season 11, but before that she was good. She was a nice character, not that funny, but nice. Kind of middle of good seems about right for her. Sideshow Mel. He has his good moments, doesn't he? He's not usually that important, but he has some funny lines now and again. He gives Lisa some advice in one of the newer episodes. He works well as a narrator when the show requires it. And I like that scene in Krusty Gets Cancelled, where he's working at the fast food place. He's another one that's kind of good, without being great. Mona Simpson. A bit of a complicated one to rank. I do like her backstory, even if it gets a bit muddled in the HD seasons. I can't put her in great because she's not the funniest character ever, but she's still good. Probably above Selma, I'd say. Seems about right. I do like her relationship with Mr. Burns. The complex backstory there makes a lot of sense if you consider the Simpson family history. And obviously Homer losing his mother from a young age does say a lot about his character as well, so yeah, definitely a good addition to the series. Mr. Tierney, Krusty's monkey. Well, if I didn't like Krusty, I don't like his monkey, do I? So yeah, bad really. I don't find him entertaining at all. Next up is Nelson's mom. And get off my screen, you skank. There is literally nothing positive about her. Obviously a horrible mother, very unlikable, not funny, doesn't have a lot to do. If you can name me a positive about her or remove her from get off my screen, but I think you'll struggle to be able to do that. These are the three college nerds that Homer befriends in Homer Goes to College, and that is one of my favourite episodes of all time, so maybe they deserve some praise, but I don't think they're that funny by themselves. They're towards the top of average, I think. They do also make a few cameos in the newer seasons, not to much avail though. This is the old Jewish man. The picture of him here, by the way, is his best moment. When he sings, "The old grey mare she ain't what she used to be, ain't what she used to be, ain't what she used to be." But that moment aside, he's average. Poochie. Poochie's iconic, isn't he? He's not as good as Itchy and Scratchy, but he's definitely iconic. He made a big impact. I rank him above all of these, I think. Maybe not Barney, though, so about here. Next up we have the mayor, Diamond Joe Quimby. He's good, isn't he? A crop mare. Gets into some battles with Chief Wiggum early on. He has some classic moments like it's not his fault the stadium collapsed. And he's always there to kind of kick off plot lines at town halls and stuff. So yeah, I think he serves a good purpose, and he's definitely towards the top end of good. Maybe below Fat Tony. I think those two deserve to be next to each other. Krusty's father. I mean, I'm not going to say get off my screen, because I don't think he's annoying, but he's just mediocre. His original episode was one of my least favourite from the classic era, so that kind of says it all, doesn't it really? He also gets killed off in the more recent seasons, in one of my least favourite episodes of all time. So yeah, definitely a bad character. Ralph Wiggum. Does he sneak into great? Maybe. I think he does, you know. He's just so quotable, isn't he? They maybe overdo it at times, especially in the newer seasons. But he's one of the funnier characters on the show, I think. Certainly for one-liners. I also like a few of the scenes he has with his dad, Chief Wiggum. So yeah, definitely a great character. This is, what's his name? Richard, isn't it? Richard is his name. He's friends with, Lewis. So I'm gonna put him next to Lewis. They basically have the same impact on the show, don't they? So, yeah. Next up is Rod Flanders. Quite a nice kid, but there's not a lot else to him, really. I think Todd has a bit more of a personality. Speaking of Todd, I'll rank him right now. I think he's bottom of good. I think he's a bit funnier, and has a bit more about him than his big brother. Todd obviously has the iconic line, "I don't want my damn vegetables." Rod doesn't really have anything like that, so yeah. Next is Judge Snyder. He's good for what he is. The very bottom of good. He's the resident, lenient judge. I like how he keeps letting Homer and Bart get away with their shenanigans. And he has some funny moments in the courtroom with Lionel Hutz in the early seasons, so yeah. Bottom of good. Next up we have Ruth Powers. She's top of average, I'd say, about here. She has a good appearance in Marge on the Lamb, then kind of disappears for a while. She comes back in Strong Arms of Amar, which is an episode I don't like. So yeah, just average really. It is nice to see Marge make a new friend, but they never really go anywhere with it. Maybe it would have worked better if she recurred as a character, but she kind of falls off the face of the earth, sadly. Next up is Sanjay. He doesn't do a lot, does he? He's just kind of there, so middle of average for him. Santa's Little Helper. Ranking an animal character now. I'll rank him with Snowball, actually. So, Santa's Little Helper is he good or is he average? I think he sneaks into good, just because he appears a lot. Even if not in a big role, he's often there in the background doing stuff. I'm not usually the biggest fan of his episodes, even in the classic era. But he does have a cool relationship with Bart, doesn't he? So, yeah, I'll be generous and leave him in good. By all rights, Snowball should be average at best, because she doesn't do much. But I'm a cat person, so I like Snowball. I like how she often does little stuff in the background, and I like the bit where she saves Homer in one of the episodes. I personally would put her above Santa's Little Helper, but objectively, Santa's Little Helper is just more important, so I'm gonna leave him like that. Next up is Sarah Wiggum. For most of the series she'd be here because she does nothing. However, one of the HD episodes does do a decent job of expanding her character, which maybe puts her up to about here. The Sea Captain is average for the most part, it's a bit of a one-note character, not a lot else to say, probably around here. We have another get off my screen character now, with Shauna Chalmers. I really don't like her. Her initial episode with Bart was creepy in my opinion. There is a season 33 episode about her, Girls Just Shauna Have Fun, where she kind of bonds with Lisa a little bit. That's a decent episode for her, but I'm still just biased against her. I don't like her. She's always mean to her dad, Gary Chalmers, as well. She's just a bit of a nutcase. I don't like her. Sherry and Terry are are average, aren't they? They can be a bit annoying, but they can have the odd good moment. They're above these two simply because they do a lot more. But they're not great, are they? The twins are going there. Waylon Smithers. I'm surprised we haven't got to him by now, but here we are. He's certainly good. I don't think he's quite great, but he's certainly very good. Below Maggie, at the top of good. He does always suck up to Mr. Burns, which can get a bit annoying, but in the newer seasons he's tried to branch out from that a little bit. The jokes in the early seasons about him being gay are quite funny. Yeah, he's just a very good character, isn't he? Next up is Snake. He's good for what he is, just like a run-of-the-mill criminal, but he has some iconic moments. I very much like his voice. It's just so recognizable. He's above all the kind of one-off characters, so probably around here by the bullies. Squeaky Voice Teen, it's quite a good one-joke character. Lunch Lady Doris is his mom, isn't it? Wasn't that something that was revealed? So I'm gonna put him next to his mom. Maybe I've got that wrong, but I think she was his mom. Let me know if I've got that right in the comments. Next up we have the Rich Texan. I think he's a similar kind of level to these guys. He's alright. I like his some of his bets with Mr. Burns, but other than that, he's nothing special. This is Johnny Tightlips. I quite like him actually. For a gimmick character, he's good. The best of the Mafia guys outside of Fat Tony for sure. Next up is Reverend Lovejoy. He's certainly better than Helen Lovejoy, being this kind of disillusioned preacher, reverend, whatever you want to call it. He's not great, but he's good. I like how annoyed he gets at Ned all the time. That's probably his best recurring joke. Next up we have Troy McClure, another Phil Hartman great character. Is he great or is he top of good? I don't think he's as good as Lionel Hutz. I think Hutz is funnier. But A Fish Like Selma is an iconic episode, isn't it? It's a tough one. He's either the very bottom of great or kind of very top of good. You know what? I'm going to put him in the very top of good. Slightly below Mags. I can't quite put him on the same level as Lionel Hutz, I don't think, but he's still very good. This is Uta. That probably is his funniest scene of being chased by Homer, but overall he's just average. Doesn't really achieve much, and doesn't appear much either. Although the sequence in one of the Treehouse of Horrors, where Principal Skinner was bragging about eating him, I found that incredibly funny, but that's not really his doing, is it? I don't want to give him credit for being eaten, so yeah, he's here. Wendell doesn't really achieve much other than being sick on a bus, so yeah, average. This is Raphael, who's like the sarcastic salesman. He's another average character, slightly better than Cookie Kwan. Similar to Gil, isn't he? But slightly below Gil, probably. Groundskeeper Willie. I'm surprised he was this far down, to be honest, but here we are. Because he is a very good character. He has some great moments. He's genuinely quite funny, has a Scottish accent and all that. He's better than Kent Brockman. Is he better than Nelson? Very close. Not quite. He goes there. Definitely a funny character. This is a shop guy who goes yes all the time. I think he's very forgettable. I don't find his one-off joke to be particularly funny, and he always just kind of takes up space. I never want to see him on my screen, so he can get off my screen. And finally we have Rainier Wolfcastle. He's quite good as an Arnold Schwarzenegger parody. The early seasons of the movie McBain were quite good. Is he good or average? For what he is, I think he's good. So that's it guys, it was quite a long video, as it was always going to be. I've kind of given you my gut instinct on these characters and where I think they belong. It's obviously all subjective, but you can give me your opinion on what you think of them. I don't think Homer can be denied, neither Bart, but some people would maybe move Lisa up or Marge up, but I'm quite happy with Liz, to be honest. By the way, let me know if you want to see more videos like this in the future. More tier lists of other shows, or maybe another one of The Simpsons. I don't know what other tier lists I would do about The Simpsons, but maybe I could do a locations tier list or something. Or rank all the characters on a scale of good to evil if I want to get really nerdy about it, but I guess we'll have to wait and see on that front. For now though, I'm just going to go and give my voice a rest. So thank you all for watching, please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it, and take care.